Have you ever stopped to wonder what really happens when you stop touching your own body? Not out of shame or embarrassment, but simply because life moved on and nobody ever told you it still mattered. Mrs. Elaine, an 82-year-old woman from Northern California, came to my clinic with a complaint that puzzled both of us. She said she could no longer feel her lower abdomen. Not pain, not numbness, just a strange sense of absence. It's like that part of me just faded. She whispered. There was no clear injury, no trauma. She was otherwise healthy. But after gently talking more, she revealed something she hadn't shared with anyone, not even her late husband. She hadn't touched herself, not intimately, not even with simple affection, in over 15 years. She didn't say it with regret, more like it had never occurred to her that it mattered. I thought that chapter was closed, she admitted. But here's the thing. That chapter is never truly closed unless we shut the book on ourselves. What Mrs. Elaine experienced wasn't unusual at all. In fact, it's happening quietly in the lives of millions of older adults across the country. It's not about sex, it's not about youth, it's about touch, attention, a relationship with your own body that doesn't disappear just because your hair turns grey or the house grows quiet. You see, the body is remarkably intelligent, but it needs reminders. Just like our muscles forget how to lift when we stop using them, and our minds slow down when we stop reading or speaking, our skin, our nerves, and even our sense of emotional presence begin to dim when we no longer connect with ourselves physically. And the silence around this topic makes it worse. Many people grow older thinking that their needs, especially their need for comfort, for sensation, for feeling good in their own skin, are something to outgrow or even feel ashamed of. But nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, modern research quietly supports what many cultures have known for centuries. That gentle, respectful self-touch isn't just normal. It's healthy. It helps with circulation, hormone regulation, sleep, and even emotional resilience. It reminds the body that it's still here, still capable, still deserving of care. What happened to Mrs. Elaine wasn't just a medical curiosity. It was a wake-up call, not only for her, but for me, and for anyone who has ever thought their body was no longer worth listening to. And so I invite you gently to ask yourself, when was the last time you gave your body a kind moment of attention? Not out of necessity, but simply out of kindness. Because this isn't only about her. It's not only about you. It's about all of us and the quiet way we forget to stay present in our own skin. Let's talk about what happens next when the body no longer receives that presence and what we can do to bring it back. Our bodies are wise. They carry our stories, our memories, our joy and pain. But like any part of us, when left unattended for too long, they begin to quiet down, and sometimes they forget. Not because they are broken, but simply because they've been neglected. I once met a gentleman named Bill, 67 years old, retired electrician, who came in for a routine checkup. He mentioned a mild discomfort when he urinated. Not sharp pain, just a dull ache in his lower pelvis that wouldn't go away. Tests ruled out infection, kidney stones, and other common issues. When we talked more, he admitted, a little shyly, that he hadn't felt connected to that part of his body for years. I figured I was past all that, he chuckled, so I just left it alone. But here's what we know from science, and more importantly, from gentle observation of the human body over time. Just like your muscles shrink if you stop using them, or your joints stiffen if you don't move, the tissues in your pelvic region can lose vitality when they no longer receive attention or stimulation. This is especially true for older adults. Blood flow is essential for tissue health. When you stop engaging that part of the body, through movement, touch, or even gentle awareness, circulation decreases. For men, this can lead to increased tension, reduced sensitivity, and in some cases, early signs of prostate congestion. For women, it often appears as dryness, irritation, or a strange feeling of disconnection, as if their body no longer belongs to them. Imagine a room in your house that you used to love, a little sunroom or a reading nook, but over time you stopped going there. You stopped opening the curtains, dusting the shelves, airing it out. Months pass, and suddenly it feels cold, unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. Not because the room has changed, but because it's been forgotten. That's what happens in the body too. The pelvic region is like that quiet, once cherished room. When we stop visiting it, literally and metaphorically, it starts to fade from our awareness. The good news is it doesn't take much to bring it back. A little movement, a little warmth, a little time, and most of all, permission to care for it without shame. What Mr. Bill experienced wasn't uncommon. And thankfully, with a few small changes, gentle pelvic stretches, warm baths, and yes, reconnecting with his own body through simple self-care, he began to feel better within weeks. The lesson here is simple but powerful. The body responds to what we give it. If we offer care, it remembers. If we offer attention, it wakes up. So the question becomes, what happens when we stop offering that connection for too long? What does the body begin to lose? And more importantly, how can we help it remember again? Let's take a closer look at the emotional side of this journey and how disconnection from the body often leads to something even deeper, a quiet fading of the self. Sometimes the hardest part about getting older isn't the aches or the slower mornings. It's the quiet fading of being seen, being touched, being truly acknowledged. And that doesn't just come from others. It begins often unnoticed when we stop touching ourselves, not in a sexual way necessarily, but in any way that says, I'm still here. I still matter. I remember speaking with a woman named Doris, a 70-year-old widow from Michigan. Her voice was calm, but there was a weight in her words. Since my husband passed, she told me, no one really touches me anymore. I don't mean affection even. I mean simple presence. I feel like a shadow of the woman I used to be. She paused, then added softly, and I guess I stopped touching myself too. I didn't see the point. That moment stayed with me, not because it was rare, but because it was so familiar. Many older adults feel this sense of vanishing, not because people have turned away from them, but because they have slowly turned away from themselves. We often forget how vital touch is, not just from others, but from our own hands, our own awareness. A hand over your heart in the morning, a gentle rub on your shoulder after a long day, a moment of stillness where you simply acknowledge your own body. These things matter more than we realize. You might ask yourself now, when was the last time you hugged yourself? Not by accident while putting on a sweater, but on purpose, with care. When was the last time you held your own hand or let it rest quietly over your chest in comfort? These small acts are powerful reminders that we are still connected to our bodies, not just as caretakers, but as full, living beings. Research in emotional health supports this deeply human need. Gentle self-touch has been shown to calm the nervous system, reduce cortisol levels, and even lift mood. But more than that, it restores a kind of inner presence, like lighting a small candle in a darkened room. When we stop this kind of care, we don't always notice it right away. It shows up slowly in how we carry ourselves, in how we speak, in the way we start to feel invisible, even to ourselves. But here's the truth. You are not invisible. You are still here. And the body, even after years of distance, is always waiting for a sign that it's not forgotten. That you still live here, that you still belong. Touch is one of the oldest languages we have. And when that language is used gently, with intention and self-compassion, it can restore so much more than just skin and nerves. It restores the self. And as we begin to reconnect in this simple way, something beautiful starts to happen. We find that we're not just caring for the body, we're caring for the spirit too. Which brings us to an important truth. What happens in the heart begins to ripple through the rest of the body. And nowhere is this more clear than in one small, often overlooked organ, the prostate. The body speaks to us in quiet ways, a change in sleep, a shift in mood, a sense that something just doesn't feel as smooth or natural as it once did. For many older adults, these changes are brushed aside as just getting older, but sometimes they're signals, subtle whispers that certain systems in the body are craving attention and care. For men, one of those systems is the prostate. This small walnut-sized gland plays an important role in both sexual and urinary function. But when it stops being active, when ejaculation no longer occurs regularly, fluids can begin to build up. Over time, this can lead to something known as prostate congestion. It's not painful at first. Often it's just a mild pressure, a more frequent need to urinate at night, or a sluggish feeling in the lower pelvis. But these early signs, if ignored, can progress into more noticeable symptoms like discomfort, inflammation, and even a higher risk of infection. What many men don't realize is that regular release, whether through partnered intimacy or gentle self-stimulation, can help clear old fluids, promote circulation, and support prostate health in a completely natural way. It's not about desire or performance, it's about function. It's about preventing a system from becoming stagnant. Now for women, the story is different, but just as important. After menopause, the body produces less oxytocin, the hormone often called the bonding hormone. Oxytocin plays a role in relaxation, emotional regulation, and sleep. Without regular stimulation through touch, affection, or orgasm, the levels of oxytocin can remain low, contributing to feelings of restlessness, low mood, or difficulty sleeping. That's why something as simple as a few moments of mindful touch, of connecting gently with your own body, can be surprisingly powerful. During arousal, and especially after climax, the brain releases a cascade of beneficial chemicals: oxytocin, dopamine, endorphins, and prolactin. Together, these help ease anxiety, soothe the nervous system, lift your mood, and support restful sleep. In fact, researchers have found that this natural chemical cocktail mimics the effects of certain medications. A single act of gentle self-pleasure can work like a mild sedative paired with an immune booster, calming the body while helping it restore and protect itself. It's important to understand, this isn't about pushing your body to do something it no longer wants. It's about remembering that your body still knows how to support you, if you let it. And part of that support starts from within by inviting those natural processes to stay active. So if you found yourself waking more at night, feeling less vibrant, or just sensing something is a little off, it may be worth asking if your body is simply waiting for a little more attention, a little more connection, a little more release, because the benefits aren't just physical. When these inner rhythms are restored, your emotional state often follows. And that in turn helps you feel more grounded, more present, more alive. And all of this delicate balance between body and mind, starts with the simple power of touch. But there's one kind of touch that often fades first as we grow older, and it's more important than we think. The comfort of our own hands and the quiet presence that comes with it. Let's talk about that next. Marjorie, a 74-year-old widow living quietly in a small town in Oregon, once told me something I'll never forget. "I thought intimacy ended when he died," she said softly, speaking of her husband. "I packed it away like our wedding photos, something precious from another time." For years, she lived with a quiet dignity, keeping her routines, taking care of her health, doing everything right. But something inside her felt faded, like a part of her life had gone into storage, never to be touched again. One day during a routine checkup, we talked not just about her blood pressure or her joints, but about how she was feeling, really feeling. She paused, then looked at me and said, "Is it silly to miss being touched, even if there's no one around to do it?" It's not silly at all. As we grow older, relationships change. Some of us lose a spouse, some grow distant in a long marriage, some of us choose to be alone. But in those quiet spaces, many begin to believe that closeness, tenderness, even physical comfort are things that only come from another person, and that without someone else, those doors are closed forever. But that's not the whole truth. Intimacy doesn't belong to someone else. It isn't gifted to you by a partner or dependent on someone lying beside you. It begins with you, with the way you speak to your body, with the way you let your hand rest gently on your own shoulder, with the way you choose to care even when no one else is looking. When there is no one left to hold you, you still deserve to be held. When the house is quiet and the nights are long, You still deserve to feel warmth and presence, especially from yourself. You don't need anyone's permission to feel close to your own body. You don't need a partner to rediscover that your skin still responds, your heart still softens, your breath still deepens when touched with kindness. In fact, some of the most healing moments come when you finally realize you were never alone. Your own hands, your own presence, your own awareness, these are the most faithful companions you'll ever have. And it's through that companionship, that tender reconnection, that something powerful begins to shift, not only in the body, but in the way we carry ourselves through life. Which brings us to something that holds many people back for far too long. The quiet, inherited shame that tells us we're not supposed to feel this way anymore. But maybe it's time to set that down. Shame is a quiet weight. It's not always loud or obvious, but it lives in the pauses between our thoughts, in the way we hesitate before reaching for what we need. For many older adults, that weight began long ago, sometimes as early as childhood. Messages from family, religion, or society planted the idea that certain feelings, especially those related to the body and pleasure, were wrong, dirty, something to be hidden. I've had patients in their 70s and 80s whisper things to me in the exam room that they've carried in silence for decades. One woman, 79, shared that she had never spoken openly about her own body, not even to her husband of 40 years. Another gentleman, 83, told me he still felt guilty whenever he felt desire, not because he believed it was wrong, but because someone else once told him it was. But here's what I tell them, and what I want to tell you now, gently but firmly, that shame was never truly yours. It was given to you, passed down, inherited like an old coat that never really fit. You didn't choose it, and now you no longer have to carry it. Shame is a borrowed emotion, and you have every right to give it back. Your body is not something to apologize for. Your emotions, your longing, your need for connection, they are not flaws. They are human. They are signs that you are still here, still feeling, still alive. Imagine what it would feel like to set that shame down, to say, I don't need to keep apologizing for being a whole person. What would it look like to move through your day without that quiet guilt? To touch your own hand without flinching? To sit with yourself in silence and feel peace, not judgment? You don't have to be loud about it. There's no need to shout or explain. But in your heart, you can start saying yes. Yes to comfort. Yes to presence. Yes to yourself. Because here's something I deeply believe. The last decades of life are not a time to shrink. They are a time to reclaim. To gather all the parts of yourself you were once told to hide and bring them into the light, gently, safely, at your own pace. You've spent so much of your life caring for others, making sacrifices, being strong. What if now you gave some of that care back to yourself? Don't let the next 20 years, however many there may be lived under the weight of someone else's rules. You don't need permission to feel good in your own skin. You don't need approval to be whole. You are already enough. And the moment you begin to believe that, something inside you begins to soften. And in that softening, in that space where shame once lived, there is room for something much more powerful. Choice. So let's take the next step together towards safe, kind, and mindful self-connection built not on guilt, but on trust. There's no right or wrong way to care for your body. There's only what feels gentle, what feels safe, and what helps you remember that you still live here. This isn't about performance. It's not about doing something the right way. It's about making space for yourself every day in a way that honors where you are now, not where you used to be. Imagine setting aside just a few minutes in your day, not for chores, not for anyone else, just for you. You might begin by creating a little pocket of peace, soft light, a quiet room, maybe even a warm towel or a favorite scent in the air. Let it feel like a gift, not a task. You can sit or lie down, whatever is most comfortable. Let your breath slow, not because you're trying to relax, but because you're finally letting yourself just be. Place your hands on your heart, your belly, your thighs, anywhere that feels like home. You're not trying to reach a goal. You're simply listening. You're saying to your body, I'm still here with you. I didn't forget you. For women, this might mean gently touching the chest or abdomen, perhaps using lotion to nourish the skin, noticing areas that may feel tight or neglected. It could be running your fingers along your arms, your hips, your face. Let your touch say, I'm worthy of softness. For men, it might begin with awareness of the breath, then gently placing a hand on the lower abdomen or pelvis. You're not waking something up, you're simply checking in. Let your presence say, I still care, I still belong here. You might notice memories or emotions arise. That's okay. This is more than a physical act. It's a form of reconnecting with yourself, with a part of you that may have gone quiet over time. And there's no need to rush. Even 5 minutes can be enough. 5 minutes of undistracted presence, of treating your body not as a machine, but as a home, with tenderness, with respect, with the same care you would offer to someone you deeply love. You don't need to tell anyone. This ritual is yours alone, like a quiet morning walk or a cup of tea at dusk. It's a moment of choosing yourself, of tending to the parts of you that are so often forgotten in the rhythm of daily life. And if just once you gave yourself permission to be touched with nothing but kindness, what might shift? If today, for just 5 minutes, you touched your own body with tenderness instead of judgment, what might change? You still matter, you still belong to yourself. Sometimes we go so long without truly being seen, without being touched, that we begin to forget we are still here, still whole, still worthy. But you are, even now, especially now. This was never about sex, it was never about performance or youth or romance. This is about being alive, about choosing, gently, to stay connected to the body that has carried you through so much. It's about remembering that care doesn't always come from outside. It can come from within, from the quiet way you hold yourself in your own hands. There is something deeply human in pausing long enough to say, I didn't forget you. To look at your own reflection and soften instead of turn away. To tend to the parts of you that have waited patiently for years, not asking for much, just to be touched with kindness. You don't need to be desired to feel deserving. You don't need to be needed to be valuable, and you don't need to be loved by another to feel lovable. Sometimes the most powerful act is simply coming home to yourself. So tonight, before the day fades, I hope you find a moment, just one, to sit quietly with your body, to lay a gentle hand where it aches or where it feels empty. Not to fix it, just to say, I'm still here, I still care. And if this message touched something in you, something you haven't named in a while, know that you're not alone. We're many, walking this quiet path of rediscovery. If it feels right, leave a little note below, a word, a feeling, or simply a heart. You never know who might be comforted by it. And if you'd like to keep walking this journey with me, this channel will be here, like a soft light at the end of the hall, whenever you're ready to return. Until then, be gentle with yourself. You're still here, and that means there's still time.